All right, welcome back to the program. Joining me right now is my guest, Engineer Barry Simone, who is the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Crossstream Group. Good to have you again, Engineer, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me once more.
Yeah. Now, let's get started from Mr. President's promise to Labour that Port Harcourt refinery would work by December. Let me also inform Nigerians that we've seen rehabilitation agreements between the NNPC Limited and some companies like Daewoo and some other companies in Korea and some other countries are saying that they are undergoing rehabilitation of these refineries. Do you think that Mr. President's promise will come to pass? And just speak to me about,
Thank you very much. And I mean, I don't know the information Mr. President has that enforced and reinforced his belief that by December, Port Harcourt refinery will come on. He probably have some privileged information, but I can tell you that the challenge of all the refineries had been long with us. And beyond Port Harcourt, Kaduna and Warri have also been talented to have been undergoing rehabilitation. Rehabilitation of refineries is usually a routine exercise, like in every other process plant. There are three kinds of repair works that go on in refineries. Number one is the very much known turnaround maintenance. People used to think that turnaround maintenance means, like you would say, a silver bullet to functionality of refineries. That's not true. Turnaround maintenance simply means cleaning up of the refineries. It doesn't mean repair of refineries.
Okay.
So people used to think that once you've done turnaround maintenance, your plant is up and running. No. There are rehabilitation exercises. They are not part of turnaround maintenance. There are repair exercises. They are not part of turnaround maintenance. Turnaround maintenance is like where you go for routine servicing of your car.
You change the oil.
Change the oil, change the filters, and put back things to continue to work again. But if you have a breakdown of engine, it's not a turnaround maintenance issue.
So that will be rehabilitation?
That will be rehabilitation.
Okay.
If you have a bad tire, that will be repair.
Is repair not the same as rehabilitation?
Not necessarily. Rehabilitation is getting everything functional, but you can repair just a defective component of your machine.
So does that mean that rehabilitation we're seeing right now with the refineries mean that a lot of components of the refineries have been broken down over the years? So with rehabilitation, from your explanation, I could be, okay, you buy new equipment, you buy new parts, and all of that.
Correct.
Okay.
That's why rehabilitation is capital intensive. Now, in a properly run plant, standard refinery, properly run plant, the maintenance regimes are properly clocked and scheduled to cause minimum disruption to the plant. Because like every other process plant, a refinery is a 24/7 plant. In other words, you should work 24 hours, 7 days a week until about 2 to 3 years, non-stop. That period of 2 to 3 years is what we call the turnaround maintenance period. So after 3 years, standard, you can bring down the plant and then clean up and then set it back on course.
So at that point, the refineries will not work?
It will not work.
You just shut
down completely. So what normally happens is that if you have a rehab or repair work, you try to schedule them to meet at that time so that you can have the minimum downtime of your plant. What happens to your contractual obligation to your supplier at that time is that the sizing of the storage of the products recognizes that you should have a stock value sufficient to service your customers through the short-term turnaround maintenance period. If you don't, you may be having contractual obligation to meet with them. And so you can imagine when we talk about turnaround maintenance in Nigeria and everybody thinks that once it's done, plant is up and running. No. Some of the items that are involved in a rehab program are what we call long lead items. So you need to book the order for their manufacture. They're not off the shelf. The modern production system in the world now is based on what they call as need basis. Because if you manufacture a component and keep in the warehouse, there's a cost of storage and all that. And so whenever you want to buy it off that warehouse, you are paying both the cost of storage and all that. So just on time basis is what we use now. So you order it, and exactly when you need it, it will be ready. And so you know what that happens. With a country like ours, where our challenge is planning, you will find that we do not schedule these spare parts procurement properly. So even when your plant is down, we are not ready. You find a situation, one turnaround maintenance move from 30 days to 60 days to 90 days. But the standard duration for turnaround maintenance for refineries is about 30 days, max 45 days, because they are integrated in the planning of the refinery process.
Okay, so can all your refineries, can you conduct turnaround maintenance on all your refineries at the same time?
That is the
So you need to schedule. Let's say
Correct.
you're doing Warri refinery turnaround maintenance. You expect that Kaduna should be up and Port Harcourt should be up
Correct.
to meet obligations.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the part of what we discussed the last time.
Last time.
When I said that putting a whole capacity in one unit would deprive you of this schedule, maintenance schedule plan.
No, but in the case of Nigeria now, our 4 refineries have not been working.
No, I said
yes.
I talked about the Dangote refinery. You asked me that question.
Yes.
I said it will not be expedient for somebody to put all his plants in one, because when you shut down for turnaround maintenance, there's no production. But if you schedule it, like Nigeria has 4 refineries, so you can schedule it. And that's the standard across the globe. So I can tell you my position very simply. Maintenance and operation of refinery is not rocket science. After all the products we import from overseas are from refineries, some much older than ours.
Some that don't even, countries that don't have oil.
Most of them. For example, Singapore.
Yes.
Singapore has no oil, but Singapore refines a minimum of 1.3 million barrels per day.
That's business for them.
Complete business. How did they come about that? Then they were conscious of the fact that there are VCL, very large crude carriers that pass through their straits, out to Japan and to China. And they queried, where are these things going to? What are they carrying? They said, oh, they are carrying what they call crude oil.
So let's be a stopgap.
Let's stop them here.
Let's stop them here.
What, do people use crude oil for anything? No. It has to be refined for it to be used. So why don't we refine it for them there? It may interest you to know that the 2 major owners of those refineries in Singapore are ExxonMobil and Shell. The same people that play in our environment. So our policy had not encouraged them to do the same thing they did in Singapore here. That's what should have been part of our government policy. It has been said several times, we need to refine 50% of our production in country. Put it as a condition for new acreages to E&P companies. You need to demonstrate, it's on paper, yes, you must show that you have local content. No, it should be a national policy. Anyway, I think we have a regime that is on board now. And I would believe that things may start getting better. That's my belief. But more importantly, we need to structure our energy mix. To be able to go back to your question with respect to Port Harcourt refinery coming on stream by December. Dangote coming on stream, Port Harcourt coming on stream, every of the plants in Nigeria, they come on stream. They guarantee only one thing: availability of products. They don't necessarily, guarantee you substantially lower price.
How? Because if there's more supply, price is supposed to go down.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from too, because the international components will play.
Crude oil that is refined in all those plants is an international product, priced internationally. And crude oil price constitutes about 85% of the cost.
Of the cost.
Of the cost.
So perhaps the other part of the cost, which is transport and perhaps importation,
They are
and
all in the 15%.
They are all in the 15, which is not so
Substantial.
much, almost negligible.
Yes, if you do sensitivity analysis, you will find that most sensitive component in getting your product price is the crude oil. That's why whenever the crude oil price goes up, it reflects on your bottom line.
Which I said earlier that
you said it earlier already.
Crude oil prices will rise.
Correct.
We should be expecting between now and perhaps in the next 3 months, we should see another price increase.
Yes. So that's the point. That's number one. Number two is that the nation needs to be aware that the more you refine in country, the less you have foreign exchange.
The more you refine in country,
the less you have foreign exchange by the structure of our economy. Over 80% of our foreign exchange comes from crude export.
So are you saying it's bad for us? We will definitely not have so much money for
correct.
The government to
you have to do the engineering, you have to do the economics properly.
Yes. So the more we refine in country,
yes.
the less we export.
Yes.
And the less money we get in foreign exchange to be domiciled at the CBN.
We need to be conscious of that.
So that means that we should also diversify our revenue sources.
That is the solution.
So we shouldn't only look at oil.
That is the solution. Because people don't understand that, I mentioned it the last time, our internal refining capacity, the volume allocated for that, is part of your OPEC quota.
Yes.
You belong to a cartel that allocates you what to produce. So we can refine oil in Nigeria, so we take none to the international market for sales. So that 80% revenue, dollar revenue that comes from sales of crude oil will no longer come.
Now let me ask this question. Even though we're in OPEC, and OPEC says we have a quota to get, is it possible for us to produce and give OPEC its quota, that is international market, while we produce separately for production?
No.
Or we must still align with OPEC's quota?
That's the rule of
the business.
Once
instead, everybody will be
that
doing
is the point.
As it likes.
The essence of being in the cartel is to control
to
prices,
regulate.
regulate.
Yeah.
So if you run, Saudi Arabia can open their wells. They have capacity to produce 12 million barrels a day. If they do that, even though you are 2 million barrels, if you produce that, the price will crash.
It will crash.
So that's why Nigeria belongs to that cartel. So you must understand all that. So it's not just let's build, rehabilitate refineries, beautiful. It guarantees you availability. Because we're already now playing according to market forces. And number one element in market forces is that every cost of an element will be built through raw material, operations, maintenance to come to the price and your markup and taxes. That's market forces.
Okay, then, engineer, let me ask you this question. Dangote has a refining capacity of 650,000 barrels per day. Our 4 refineries located in 3 areas, Warri, Port Harcourt, and Kaduna, 445,000 barrels per day. Yes. Our OPEC quota, naturally as at today, perhaps over 1 million barrels per day, about 1.3 million barrels per day. Correct. Now, if we add 650,000 plus 455,000 barrels per day, assuming these refineries come on stream now, it will give us about 1.2 or about 1.1 million barrels a day. How do we get this? How do we get this all to be able to furnish Dangote refineries and the 3 refineries?
You get it from our 1.3.
We'll get it from our 1.3. Then at the end of the day, what do we export? 200,000 barrels.
Yes, or less. Remember, there are other refineries, modular refineries already in production already.
Yes, exactly.
They will add all that and deduct all that.
So how do we now look at these issues? Because it's really a challenge. Now, okay, in December last year, November, December, we're producing about 900,000 barrels because of oil theft and what we've seen, which is still there. I think, was it yesterday, an oil vessel was intercepted.
By
Tantita Security
Group.
Now, if we take a look at 650,000 barrels of Dangote alone, since Dangote will soon come on stream, a lot of people were saying it would have come on stream because it launched in May before the last president left. 1.3 minus 650,000, the remaining 650,000. So please help us do the math. Sorry, everybody, we're doing a lot of mathematics here, but that's what it entails because these are also a bit technical, and when we are arguing, we should argue with facts. Correct. So what do you think, engineer?
No, my position on this is that as a nation, we need to be comprehensive in planning our energy mix, because in engineering planning, you identify your need and identify what we call showstoppers, the obstacle to meeting your need. So you begin to deal with the obstacles so that you can meet your need. Number one obstacle here is that we have a mono economy that derives almost all the foreign exchange from crude oil. So the first thought in planning is to see how you can protect that income base. But if you protect it by taking your crude to the international market, you will lose the local refining capacity. So what do you do? What do you use the local refined product to do? Transportation, power, and all that. You look at the mix, energy mix the nation has, and see the ones that are not part of OPEC quota, from where you can still derive those other energy products.
And what would that be in this case?
You're already talking about CNG. If you, for example, I have a comment on that though. For example, if you roll out the CNG program, those vehicles that will use CNG, their need of petrol will drop. And so you don't need to refine to meet their needs. That's number one. But I can tell you, the kind of planning I'm talking about, the comprehensive planning I believe the nation should engage in at this particular time is this. There's CNG, there's LNG, there is PNG, and there's LPG. These are the major 4 gas forms. We have sufficient experts. I can tell you this, NNPC that I knew in the 80s had one of the finest minds in refining. I got involved in thorough maintenance of a refinery in 1998. I interacted with the engineers, well-trained, but they had constraints. Those constraints were the things that destroyed the refineries to death. So you must be able to identify these constraints. To fix the refinery and bring them back is not the issue. Have you identified why they died in the first place?
Why did they die? Was it the unavailability of crude being supplied to them?
Part of it.
Part of it.
Major part of it.
Because I know some people that are actually worked in that refineries that they say, this is the problem. We have the capacity to refine, but they are not giving us crude.
That's the point. So that's why I said the current regime that is faced with this challenge of effective energy mix for the nation, for optimal resource utilization, whether gas or crude oil, it's a national resource. So it has to be optimized. So you don't play on one linear line. You have to put everything on the table. I can tell you there are sufficiently knowledgeable Nigerians, engineers, petroleum economists, trained by NNPC, that can sit down and analyze this and schedule what to do, where to put our hands in. For example, I can tell you, well, now everything is, CNG everywhere, CNG everywhere. I can tell you, just on a face value analysis, CNG cost effectiveness has limitations of 250 kilometers square reduced effectiveness, whereas LNG has over 600 kilometer reduced effectiveness. So if you begin to focus on CNG vehicles beyond 350 kilometers, for example, from Lagos to Abuja, you might find that LNG-fired cars
will be more
cost effective. So these are to be put on the table and analyzed, and know from what region you will focus on CNG, on what region you focus on LNG, what region you look at LPG. It can be done. You create a matrix of all this and put them things in their boxes, and then run with well-planned process.
Okay. So, engineer, what's coming to my mind is that for us not to have seen the refineries working at least in the last 15 to 20 years, is it deliberate by the government not to make it work? Because with your own analysis now, if all our refineries are working and they are able to refine crude, we have less to export abroad, that means we have less foreign exchange, the government may not function. So the government may have all this information at their tables and just be deceiving us Nigerians that leave these people, they don't know what's in there they talk because we won't have enough money to be able to function. That could be it. Are you seeing that?
I believe that the information is available to the Planning Authority of NNPC. The information is available. NMPC needs to come clean and let the nation know what have been their constraints. I believe that before these plants come back on stream, hazard analysis and the challenges would have been modeled and solution developed so that it won't go back the old way. You don't spend all this money to rehabilitate and bring them back to life, and you still retain the attitude that killed them. They will only die. You would have wasted the resources. So we don't have the discipline to deal with all this as Nigeria, not just a refining program, in most of our operations. Remember the last time I said the challenge of the downstream, where the refinery belongs, has been with us because it is 100% run by Nigerians.
Are you saying that we don't have capacity to run businesses?
I said we don't have the discipline. We have the capacity, we don't have the discipline.
In government?
Yes.
Because private sector is different.
Correct. That's the problem.
So those people in the private sector, do they have two heads now? So it should be a governance issue.
It's a governance issue. The way it is done in many climes, strange enough, in African countries, like Egypt is the biggest refiner in Africa. Over 800,000 barrels per day refinery. About 5 refineries spread across Egypt. They are owned by the National Oil Company of Egypt. But they are operating efficiently. So it's an attitude thing. And so the same thing with Algeria. The same thing with South Africa. So we're down the rung of the ladder in capacity within Africa. And then we have trained one of the finest brains that worked in NMPC will tell you clearly. If you recall, the recruitment exercise in NMPC, they used to get the finest of the brains. The way oil companies take them, NMPC used to take them in that manner. And so they are not in short of technical competence, but there is a problem beyond them. For example, the way it is run, when they make propositions for rehabilitation, nobody cares about that. They continue to ask them to run until they run the plant to death. Approval processes, there's a complex problem. Even when they make a provision for spare parts to ensure that you change things timely. Warehouse management strategy, best practices are not followed.
Okay, let's take a look at this argument around modular refineries. This argument, because I know there are also modular refineries in Russia. There are also, there's also an argument about all these Niger Delta boys that are, refining in their own little spaces. Why not get those boys? I've heard a lot of argument around this. So what do you think about modular refineries and the supposedly illegal refineries? Yeah. Because there are also licensees of modular refineries.
Okay. We call them, by law, they are illegal. So you can call them artisanal refiners, the way we have artisanal miners all over the country.
Yeah, all over the country.
And that's the mentality of the people. This is our own thing, we can get it and use it. But look at the economics. It makes a little sense to people when they can buy diesel from those refineries at a cheaper price, without knowing that cheap price is as a result of not accounting for the feedstock, which is the crude oil. So it is stolen. So the cost doesn't go into it. So once that happens, they say, oh, they are cheaper, let's encourage them. No, you can't do that. Apart from the crude oil is sourced illegally or stolen, you also find that they do not manage the waste appropriately. And you see the devastation in Niger Delta. Pollution all over everywhere. So no nation will allow that. And it is suboptimal utilization of your national resource. So nobody should talk about that. What I believe is this. If you want the Niger Delta indigenes to participate in the refinery program, you can design a structure. We had actually worked on this long time ago in 2009. Developed modular refineries on 9 states of Niger Delta. We moved around with state governments to buy into the program. And who was our business advisors? PwC, who went that high. We developed the concept that to make this thing work, we need to integrate the state government, the community, these boys, and federal government, so that they will have a sense of belonging and a properly engineered facility will be in place, so that you don't waste, you don't degrade the environment, you don't waste resources. We actually offered to run an integration program where, like I said, this problem is not peculiar to Nigeria. Some of the Western world went through this phase. Canada, for example, Canada has about 17 refineries in Canada. Out of those 17 refineries, the communities also challenged the oil companies. There was crisis. But what did they do? They appointed a group to carry out Aborigine integration plan, who looked at all the problems and placed them on the table and got everybody's interest to be on the table. That can be done here. Our brothers in the Niger Delta want to live. They want to have a sense of belonging. That can be integrated in a properly planned society than encouraging a wasteful approach to resource management.
Okay, I want to have your views on these oil vessels that are being caught at sea. What do you think, and the burning of it? Because a lot of people are saying that it's actually a very stupid idea. I don't know if there's a technical basis that people stole crude on a vessel, you get it as a country and you burn it. So I don't know what is happening in that climate, whether it's actually right to burn that vessel. But what do you think, very quickly, because I have another question before we go.
No, of course, both by economics, by environmental consideration, and by law, it's completely unacceptable that you destroy evidence, even if you think you have captured it. There's a value to be derived from that. The stolen crude is your crude oil. That's why it was stolen. So you should be able to recover the value of the crude oil. So by burning it, how did you recover the value? And the burning will pollute the environment as well. Even the vessel, because it's already stolen, it's exhibit, you can scrap that vessel and sell it to steel mills and recover additional money. So why would you want to waste such resource? A country in need of revenue, you have a source of revenue.
Which is millions of dollars.
Yes, and you waste it. It shows that there is something more that meets the eye.
Something fishy?
Something fishy. There's no way to explain it to anybody. Also, on this particular vessel that was caught a few days ago, we have a new set of service chiefs. The riot squad was read out to them. The government has been talking about end to this. And yet, just yesterday, a vessel carrying crude oil was sailing through our waters. Imagine that if Tantita was not on board, it would have gone.
Yes. So does it mean that Tantita now is even stronger than a state apparatus of Navy and all of that, the joint committee on that? Does it mean that a private, I also understand Tantita in terms of being indigenous, they also know the terrain, but does it mean that if Tantita did not get that, just like you said, the ship would have just passed?
Too bad.
Okay. Finally, President's ministerial lists out, about 47 now. Any moment from now, we should be expecting like the screening to continue at the National Assembly. What is your agenda for the new petroleum minister? Do you think that President Tinubu should do the same way Buhari did, to be the petroleum minister, then have a state petroleum minister? Who do you think, I don't know, out of everyone that you have seen, how should we approach our oil sector, especially with having a petroleum minister that would deal with all these issues? Should President Tinubu be the petroleum minister, or should get someone?
No, I believe that a substantive, industry experienced personnel should head the petroleum ministry.
Have you seen that in the mix of these 47 people?
I wouldn't know. I'm not a clairvoyant. I won't read the mind of the president, what he plans to do. It became fashionable from Obasanjo's period for the president to retain the portfolio of
petroleum ministry.
And some people have argued, why didn't you retain the portfolio of agric ministry? When agriculture is also is being driven to become the mainstay.
When Obasanjo himself is a farmer.
So the point, therefore, is that a substantive minister should be appointed with experience. And that minister should set up a think tank of industry experts who will sit down and develop a master blueprint on energy mix for Nigeria. Should be one of the mandates of the minister.
Will it be different from what we have, the PIA?
PIA is the
law.
law governing the place. But the mix
of how
it's an operation. It's not the law thing. The law is already there. But how do you determine what segment of your natural resource should be put for CNG, what segment should go for LNG, what segment should be taken to refinery for? It should be planned by technocrats who are experienced in that particular matter.
Okay. In 10 seconds, are you optimistic that Port Harcourt, Warri, and Kaduna will come on stream? Port Harcourt, perhaps by December? I didn't get a clear yes or no from you as we close, because we've got to go now.
I don't have the capacity to read tomorrow. And so
you don't have a crystal ball?
No, I don't have a crystal ball. But it's a welcome development. And remember my point. Coming on stream doesn't change much. It can only ensure availability. It doesn't mean that price will come down. But the most important thing is that let not what killed the refineries be retained.
Okay.
That's my position.
We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you for having me once more.
You're welcome. All right, I've been speaking with Engineer Barry Simone, who is the founder and chief executive officer at Crossroom Group. We've been talking about petrol subsidy removal and fixing refineries. That's the much we've brought to you today. Thank you all for your good company today and this week. Please join me again next week. Of course, Monday I'll be here bright and early. I'll see you all again. I am Nancy Naji. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see by now.